Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland. So, Mr. VV Putin, he's just landed in Hanoi, Vietnam, early this morning. Of course, it's a very different time in the Far East, having flown from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, commonly called North Korea. Why did he bother visiting Vietnam? Because Putin is very chauvinistic. He's always harping on about how mighty Russia is. He wants to play with the big boys. He despises countries he regards as puny. And he, as he would see it, has to lower himself to visiting Vietnam. Now, I feel no disrespect to Vietnam. I come from quite a small country myself. If you say Ireland, it's the British Isles, is a bit bigger, not huge in area. Ireland were quite a smaller population. The British Isles, medium population. The British Isles as a whole, small in area. But even though I didn't, there's no need to be disdainful of those who happen not to have a large landmass. And Putin is going in for braggadocio. And of course, Russia's got the greatest land area in the world. And then Putin visiting Vietnam, which has a population not to be sneezed at, is at 80 million. Well, he wants to demonstrate that Russia is not friendless in the world. He's always harping on about Russia's Soviet legacy. Not that he wants Marxist Leninism. He very much likes his private property, but he does like totalitarianism. He does like massive state violence against his own citizens and ultra intolerance of the mildest dissent. That bit he likes, man-made famines, all the rest of it, and wars of aggression. The Soviet Union has the ignominious distinction, but the only country ever expelled from the League of Nations for unprovoked aggression, the invasion of Finland. But he's there because, of course, North Vietnam, which took over the whole of Vietnam, was an ally of the Soviet Union in the Cold War. Were it not for munitions and so forth from the Soviet Union, then the communists would not have been able to take over Vietnam. And of course, the current Vietnamese government is a legatee of that, not of South Vietnam, which was a capitalist open society. I can't say South Vietnam was exactly democratic, but Vietnam is not democratic to this day. It has opened up quite a lot. And actually, how they prospered, capitalism. Till the 90s, they were one of the poorest countries in Asia, and now they're almost mid-rank in Asia. Um, but he was guaranteed a warm reception there. It wasn't quite on the insane level of rapturousness that was seen in North Korea. North Korea's got compulsory enthusiasm. You see all those little children drilled to wave and chant and all the rest of it. Wow, it was sick to exploit little children like that, to hail a tyrant who's murdered so many other children on purpose in countries like Ukraine, and indeed his own country, Russia, in Chechnya. It was just gross. This choreographed display of supposed geniality and warmth towards him. But there he is in Vietnam. Now, Vietnam pursues a policy of neutrality. It's not an ally of Russia, nor indeed is it hostile to Russia, trades as normal, abstained on the invasion of Ukraine in the United Nations, and indeed played host to US presidents such as Bill Clinton in the early 90s. Relations been normalized with the United States to everybody else for decades. But not North Vietnam, forgive me, Vietnam uses Russian military technology partly because it's cheap, and it's plentiful. So there's another thing is North Vietnam, or I keep saying North, Vietnam is prospecting for oil in the South China Sea. Of course, China throwing its weight around, creating these artificial islands, claiming more of the continental shelf. Its encroachment on the Philippines is worrying, not just for the Philippines, but every country in the region. And although the People's Republic of China was vital in helping the communists win in Vietnam, by supplying munitions, often the Soviet munitions came via China, those who weren't manufactured in China. There's always been this tetchy relationship between the PRC and Vietnam. In 1979, only shortly after the Americans withdrew from Vietnam, there was a brief border conflict between the People's Republic of China and Vietnam. And that's actually the last time China has fought. So one of the reasons they're chary about trying to take back Taiwan is because their military's capability is a bit of an unknown quantity. Whether they don't have any tanks and planes and all the rest they have, but how they're actually going to perform under fire, they're untested. Um, the Vietnamese, they're happy to have any diplomatic support, show China that they're not alone in the world. They can buy this stuff. But I don't think China's going to invade them. But China is not an entirely friendly neighbor. Yeah, the Russian oil and gas companies are helping the Vietnamese search for accessible oil and gas in the sea, and Vietnam doesn't have the technical know-how to approach that. Vietnam is a country that Russians can visit visa-free. So, and then Putin would be flying back to Russia. So it's part of his strategy of reaching out to the global South, as he prefers to say, the global majority, saying these evil Westerners, Americans and so on, and Brits and French, don't forget the wickedry of imperialism. You're allies to our side. Really, we're against you. We're not one of those white supremacist countries, despite the Putin regime openly assisting white supremacist parties in the democratic world, because they'll play both sides of the streets. Anything to undermine democracy, uh, encouraging people to express maximalist positions, trying to make sure that Western societies are riven with divisive rhetoric, with hate speech, and so on, the kind that Putin uses in his own country against various outgroups, gays, or ethnic minorities. So yeah, I don't think a great deal is going to be achieved. Maybe some trade deals, maybe some memorandum of understanding. It's not going to be as substantive as what happened in North Korea. But this defensive pact with North Korea is quite worrying for Ukraine because, as Putin claims that Ukraine started the war, and Sergei Lavrov even had the nerve to say that at a conference in New Delhi a couple of years ago, and the whole room laughed at him. Putin will claim that Russia's been invaded because those 5 regions of Ukraine that he annexed, he claims that they are Russian sovereign soil. And so, by the Ukrainians trying to defend their homeland, he'll say that's an invasion of Russia. And because there's an attack on Russia, he'll say, well, the North Koreans, you must come to our aid. And obviously, Kim Jong Un, like Putin, like a communist, doesn't care about human life at all. Nobody treats workers worse than a commie, and may well send some of his soldiers to fight there in return for hard currency, oil, gas, food, any technology, things like that. Say we've got North Korea, is it like 30 million people? And a lot of them are expendable. So they might actually send North Korean troops, even though they don't say so openly. We shall see. Um, North Vietnam has got cordial relations with Western countries. The regional one is Australia, with just about every country. And so they like to show that they've got their options open. And the thing is, for countries like the United States or whatever, or European Union countries, don't take us for granted. Okay. If you treat us badly, we've got somewhere else to go. We could draw closer to Russia. Trouble is, Russia is not an enticing ally at the moment because obviously its military performed so poorly. This offensive in the Kharkiv area or in other parts of in East Ukraine, they've taken very little in all these months. Ukraine is 605,000 kilometers, square kilometers approximately. Russia controls is it something like 110,000 square kilometers already, and they claim to have taken something like 4,000 square kilometers in 2024. That is pathetic, considering they've sustained easily 100,000 casualties. Probably only a quarter of that are killed this year. You do the cost benefit analysis. It's patently not worth it. But obviously, Russian people are worth nothing to Putin. Beings aren't worth it in general, just to gain a bit more land, which he totally doesn't need. So, what do you think the outcome of this is a Vietnam meeting? Should it worry anyone? Was it a gain for Russia and or Vietnam? Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal. Goodbye.